Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to paint 5 watercolour paintings with a summer twist. If you're looking for some creative ideas or projects to work on during the summer or any other time of year, I hope these paintings may give you some inspiration. They're really fun to make, and now let's get started. So this first painting we're going to be working on is called Summer Favourites, and my idea was to create a poster that I could hang up in my office to celebrate all the things that I loved best about summer. It was inspired partly by the memory logs or monthly favourites that people sometimes draw in their diaries or bullet journals. It's just a visual way of recording your likes, activities and memories from a certain period. For the painting, I started out by brainstorming 10 items that I could draw that represented the things that I loved about summer. What's really nice about this design is that it's so easy to customize, so your 10 things will be different to mine and different to everyone else's. Things that you could consider including on your poster could be food, summer fruits like watermelons or cherries, ice creams, barbecues, cold drinks, or activities like swimming, going on holiday, maybe clothes that you love wearing during the summer, movies that you want to see, plants that you have that flower in the summer, and just so on. Things like that. I started out by writing the title in the centre of the page. You can get as fancy with the calligraphy as you want, but I decided to make mine quite simple today. Then I drew the objects evenly around the page. When spacing out the objects, it's easier to start by placing one object at each of the 4 corners and then working inwards. You'll get a much more evenly spaced spread that way. I also added 1 or 2 words around each object just to explain what each one of them meant, and also I liked the combination of text and images on this page. Then I went over the pencil lines with a waterproof purple liner pen. If you don't have a waterproof liner, then you could watercolour first and then outline your drawing, or use a coloured pencil to do the outlining. And also all the supplies are listed in the description box below. You don't need many supplies to follow along with this tutorial, just some watercolour paper. I'm using 300g Canson paper, a set of watercolours, I'm using my Japanese ones but any brand will work, a graphite pencil, a few coloured pencils, a liner pen, a white paint pen, brushes, water and some washi tape. So you'll probably have some of those supplies already on hand. After I'd filled in all the watercolours, I added some final details with a couple of coloured pencils and some white highlights. I didn't overdo the shading here as I wanted the painting to keep that soft watercolour look. This is the first painting and it makes a really nice poster, and I'm going to enjoy keeping it in my office over the summer, and maybe when the seasons change I'll make another. I think an autumn one would look really nice as well. This next painting is called Galaxies, and we're going to be doing a wet on wet technique with the paint and use washi tape to mask off the colours into blocks. So to start with, you're going to mask off sections of the page. I'm using 3 different washi tapes here. Each one is a different thickness, and this helps to give a lot of variation and interest to the lines afterwards. You want to lay the washi tape down randomly across the page, but make sure all the lines follow on from one another. Much like a maze, much like in the design of a maze. You don't want a line just stopping in the middle of a box, for example. You want it to have quite a fluid look to it. You also want to run your fingers over the tape after you stuck it down, just to make sure it's stuck down everywhere. Otherwise you may get paint seeping underneath the mask. If you do have that, you can always go in after everything is dry and fix it with some white paint, but it's much easier just to make sure the tape is stuck down beforehand. Then using clean water, I then wet a section and then dropped in 3 colours into it, letting them blend and pull together. I ended up picking 3 colour blends for the painting: yellow and oranges, reds, pink and purple, and then 2 blues and a purple. I tried to evenly spread these different colour blends across the page, and you'll want to make sure that you work 1 box at a time when you're doing the painting process. It's also important here to have 2 cups of water, one to wash your painting brush and another with clean water for you to use to wet the sections. This will help prevent your paints from getting muddy. Once everything was dry, I carefully took off the masking tape. If you're worried about wasting all your pretty washi tape, after you've taken it off the paper, you could set it aside, stick it down to a piece of plastic, a DVD packet or something like that. And I have another video called 5 ways to use washi tape, which I'll link in the cards section of this one. The video will give you some ideas for how to use up your excess tape in other artworks, so you don't have to waste it. Then I did the final touches and I added some stars to the galaxy blocks. I varied the elements a little between the colours, painting stars and dots in the yellow sections, hearts and dots in the pink, and then swirls and dots in the blue, just to give things a bit of an extra interest. This piece is really bright and colourful and very easy to make. I really like the contrast between the swirling galaxies and the geometric blocks and straight lines. This next painting is fun and very random, so even if you did this painting 5 times, you'll get a different look each time, so it's really fun to see how each painting turns out. What you're going to need to do is to start by creating random shapes. Just load some colour up onto your brush and then smudge the brush across the paper and paint random shapes. Try not to think too much about the marks you're making, just let the paint do what it wants. And it's also nice to vary your colours as well, so you get a bit of colour interest on the page. Then once everything is dry, you can go in with a fine liner or a brush pen and decorate those shapes. This page was inspired by an art challenge I saw Marcachino do on her channel a while back. It looked so fun and also so easy to customise. Now, I don't know if she came up with the idea or whether it's a general challenge on YouTube, but I really think it's worth giving it a go, and I'll leave a link to her video of this particular challenge in the description box below, so you can check that out if you'd like to see what she came up with. There are a couple of ways that you could approach filling in these shapes. You could look at the outlines and then try to make them into animals or objects and kind of try to see what you can make the shapes into, or you could do what I'm doing here, which is to draw inside the shapes. Both ways look really great, and you could always try both and do multiple paintings. I really like the way the faces look here. They look as if they've been torn up and then glued down onto the page. It has a very collage look to it all. As you're looking at the shapes on the page and doodling in them, you may also find it helpful to rotate the page around, just to kind of see if you can see different things from different angles. I found that to be quite helpful. This painting is going to be quite loose and splattery, so I started with a rough sketch of 3 ice creams, a lolly or magnum type shape, a scoop in a cone, and then a series of scoops in a bowl. You want to sketch very lightly or use a coloured pencil as I'm doing here. The idea is for you to just see where to paint, but you don't want any lines to show up afterwards. Also, when you're sketching, don't worry about the inside details here. Just focus on the main outline, the silhouettes of the shape, and leave all the details to do after you've painted. They're not going to show up anyway, so it's best just to focus on the outline here. Then you want to fill each of the shapes with clean water and then drop different colours into it, just like we did with the Galaxies painting. Now here I went for yellow, orange, pink, green and blue. You need to work quickly in light layers. So you put on a layer of water, drop in a few colours, then let the layer dry before you wet the shape again and add more colour to it. This way you'll avoid getting too much mud with the colours mixing together, and you can build up vibrant colours with a lot of texture and blending underneath each layer. If you end up with mud at any point, or you put too much water on and the paint starts pooling together, just grab some kitchen towel and dab the paint off and then start again. The paint comes up very easily when you're working with watercolour. You need to try and keep most of the paint within the main shapes that you've drawn, but I did also add some splatter in some of the colours that I was using outside the shapes, and I also used a straw to blow the paint out in these little bursts. This is completely optional, and if you don't like it, then you don't need to do it on your painting, but I think it adds a little bit of something to the overall design. I did a total of 4 layers with the wet into wet colour technique, and then once everything was completely dry, I went in with a white paint pen and added the lines. Now I could go in and add all the details to the ice cream cone. I added patches of shine, some spots, some sparkles. If you'd prefer a bolder outline, you could go in with a black or a brown pen, but I really like the subtlety of the white. The lines are just bold enough so that you know what the shape is, but not too bold that they overcome the watercolour blending and all those colours we added in the background. So that's the ice cream painting. I particularly like this one. For the final painting, we're going to be doing some loose florals. Watercolour florals are very popular at the moment and they're really fun to paint. You don't need to sketch, plan or outline, you just use your brush to create all the shapes. I picked 5 colours for the different flowers that I was going to be doing today, and I assigned 1 colour to each flower type, and I made up the flowers as I was going along. But what you can do is just to vary the number of petals and the different shapes to create different flowers. It's also a good idea to vary the size. So the roses, for instance, here are much bigger than anything else. Then the yellow flowers are half or a quarter of the size of the roses, and then I have some orange flowers that are a little bit smaller than that, and the very smallest flowers are just tiny little purple dots. The big thing here to keep in mind to get this look and this technique is to keep all the flowers and the leaves and the flower petals separate from each other. So nothing should be touching. They should be white in between everything. My idea with this painting was just to relax and not to worry about placement too much. Now looking back, I think I should have had more roses on the page. I wanted to fill the whole page, but I think I should have added more of the larger elements and scattered them throughout the page more. But the page just grew very organically as I was painting. As I wanted to fill the whole page up, that's where having some really tiny flowers, like just little dots, is really handy, because you can use them to fill up odd spaces and just to complete the picture. I also added a little bit of shading to some of the flowers. I added a little orange to the centre of the yellow flowers, a darker pink to the underside of the rose petals, red dots on the orange flowers, and so on. It's a very loose painting. It's meant to be relaxing and not something you need to stress out about, and you don't have to worry about getting it too perfect. You just need to create shapes and petals, and everyone will know that they're flowers. It's a really fun and loose page to make. So those are the 5 watercolour painting projects. Which one did you like best? Make sure you leave me a comment down below in the comments section and let us know. Also, if you have any friends who are looking for creative projects to do this summer, then feel free to share the video. As always, I hope you all have a creative day, and I will see you next time.